Welcome to this explainer. Look, let's just be totally honest for a second. We've all been there. You're standing at the front of a room staring down a massive slide full of data, and suddenly you realize you're relying on the exact same words over and over again. Big, small, went up, went down. It's kind of intimidating, right? Especially when you feel like your vocabulary just isn't doing justice to the actual numbers. But what if a few really precise tweaks to your language could literally transform you from a nervous presenter into a highly confident, captivating expert? Today, we are going to master the language of numbers and frequency. We are pulling our insights today straight from an incredible text called English Collocations in Use. Specifically, we're diving into a chapter that's completely dedicated to number and frequency, and we're extracting the core tools to build you a totally practical, professional data storytelling toolkit. Because, this isn't just about basic grammar. It's about learning the specific word combinations, the collocations, that native speakers and top-tier professionals actually use to make their data sing. Okay, here is the roadmap for how we'll break this down today. First up is Section 1, sizing it all up. Then we'll move into Section 2, navigating specific numbers. After that is Section 3, the rhythm of frequency. And we'll wrap it all up with Section 4, describing the data.
So let's jump right into Section 1, sizing it all up, or moving beyond just saying big and small. Stop for a second and really think about the words large and small. I mean, they're fine, but they don't really paint a vivid picture, do they? Instead of defaulting to those, you want to look at specific adjectives that naturally group or collocate with the words number and amount. When you really want to emphasize that something is incredibly huge, use words like enormous, substantial, significant, or considerable. If a figure literally catches you off guard, well, you can say there was a surprising amount of something. And on the flip side, when you're dealing with the absolute smallest end of the spectrum, utilizing words like minute, that's pronounced minute, and tiny perfectly emphasizes the exact, precise scale you're dealing with.
In fact, our source material hits the nail on the head with this direct quote, "Try to use them instead of small or large where appropriate." Making this deliberate word choice instantly elevates the impact and the professionalism of your statement. Just listen to the difference. Saying a substantial amount carries so much more weight and authority in a boardroom than simply saying a large amount, right? It tells your audience that you haven't just skimmed the data. You've truly evaluated its significance.
All right, moving right along to Section 2, navigating specific numbers. Let's get into the actual mechanics of math.
Now that we can confidently describe the overall size of our data, we have to navigate the nitty-gritty of upward and downward movements. Look at the nuance here between drop and decline. They both describe a downward trend, sure. If you're talking about fewer people joining a program, you could honestly use either. But there's a really crucial difference in formality here. The word drop carries a much more informal tone. Saying there's been a drop in numbers is great for, say, a casual water cooler chat with a colleague. But if you're writing an official report or giving a formal presentation, using decline, as in there's been a recent decline in the number, is absolutely the better, more professional choice. We see the exact same thing with upward trends. Let's say we're discussing a worrying trend, like homelessness. You definitely have options. You could say there is a rise in the number, but keep in mind that using the word rise is just slightly more informal. To strike that formal, highly authoritative tone, you'd want to formally state there was an increase in the number. It's these tiny shifts in vocabulary that totally dictate the atmosphere of your entire presentation. And these distinctions apply directly to our everyday math sentences too. Just look at these classic collocations. You've got odd numbers, like 1, 3, and 51, versus even numbers, like 2, 4, and 50. When you're doing the actual math, a calculation comes to a total of a specific number. So if we add up all the figures, it comes to a total of 794. And finally, when you need to define your measurements, you use a unit of. The standard unit of currency in most EU countries is the euro, but you could just as easily talk about a unit of electricity or a unit of length. These are your structural building blocks.
Okay, on to Section 3, the rhythm of frequency. Basically, how often things actually happen.
We've got the numbers, right? But now we need to express how often a trend or a problem actually occurs out there in the real world. Let's draw a massive contrast here. On one side, you have widespread. This word strongly collocates with things happening in many places or among a huge group of people. You might see widespread support for a new policy, or maybe widespread damage from a weekend storm. It implies something huge and encompassing. On the total opposite end of the spectrum, we have rare. This is reserved for the truly infrequent and the special. We're talking about the natural world, a rare disease, a rare bird, a rare species, or even highly collectible items of special interest like rare coins.
Now, stepping away from formal presentations for just a second, let's talk about everyday spoken English. If someone repeatedly does something that genuinely annoys you,
Informal English has the perfect structure for it. You use the word keeps followed by an action, like, please don't keep interrupting me when I'm trying to work. Or, here's a highly relatable one for any parents out there. The children keep asking me when we're going to buy a new computer. It so perfectly captures that repetitive, kind of frustrating rhythm of daily life. And speaking of frustrating repetition, let's clarify an absolute classic stumbling block, the subtle difference between constant and continual. They both convey the idea of something happening repeatedly, but the nuance is key here. Constant implies something happening repeatedly without ever stopping. For example, I couldn't get on with my work today because of constant interruptions. The phone kept ringing every 5 minutes. Continual, on the other hand, also means repeatedly happening, but often with a negative connotation of pure annoyance. As our source notes, it was a mistake to go on holiday with them. Their continual complaining drove us mad. Knowing that subtle distinction is such a fantastic tool for your vocabulary belt.
Which brings us to our grand finale. Section 4, Describing the Data, where we narrate those trends dynamically.
Imagine you are standing up there at the front of the room. It's time to bring those charts to life. When you're dealing with data that shoots straight upwards, your language, and honestly, even your pacing, needs to reflect that sudden excitement. If profits just explode in July, do not just say they went up. Tell your audience that profits rose sharply, or they increased steeply. You can say there was a dramatic rise in student applications. These words pack a punch. They convey incredible momentum and sudden positive energy.
Conversely, when the news isn't so great, you've got to shift to a much more serious, urgent tone. If profits absolutely collapsed in September, you need to explain to your stakeholders that the numbers fell sharply or fell steeply. You're describing a dramatic fall in the data. The really cool thing is that words like sharply and steeply work in both directions, and they instantly signal to your listeners that this is a major, rapid change they need to pay attention to right now.
But here's the thing. To tell a truly complete story, you have to contrast those sudden, dramatic shifts with the rest of your data, because not everything is an emergency. Sometimes numbers just build up over a long period. In that case, you'd say the numbers have increased steadily or increased gradually over the years. And what if there's no shift at all? What if things haven't changed one bit? Then you tell your audience that the numbers have remained constant or stable. Sudden, slow, or no shift at all, you now have the absolute perfect collocation for every single scenario.
So I'll leave you with this. The very next time you step up to present your data, which of these precise, powerful words are you going to choose to turn your numbers into an unforgettable story? Will it be a substantial rise, maybe a minute decline? The language of data is completely in your hands now. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep learning.